Saludos a toda la afición de la lucha libre. Este que les habla es Michael Morales Torres, integrante del equipo de Lucha Libre Online. Y tenemos el enorme privilegio de presentarles a nuestro invitado especial en la tarde de hoy, directamente desde Estados Unidos para el mundo. Una de las voces que todo el mundo recuerda del original ECW, quien estaba muchas veces con Joey Styles. También lo recordamos de momentos con la WWE en un momento dado, e incluso con TNA. El caballero que en su momento dado también manejó los Dudleys, la voz clásica de ECW junto a Joey Styles. Joel Gertner, Mr. Gertner, it is an honor for us to have you here as our guest. How are you doing today, sir?
Bien, bien, bien. Es un gran placer to be with you.
And I didn't expect you to speak Spanish at all. So, del 1 al 10, ¿cómo está su español?
Poquito. Hablo un poquito de español, pero cada tiempo que es una oportunidad trabajar y estar contigo y con Hugo Sabinovich, es un gran honor y placer.
El honor es nuestro. It is our honor, sir, to have you here as our guest. Hugo as well is honored to have you here on our brand. So I wanted to start this interview regarding how did your passion for pro wrestling started, which was either the wrestler or the rivalry or the match that engaged you enough to say, hey, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
I liked the managers. I loved the talkers, los que hablan. I loved the wrestling. La lucha amo, pero the talkers que hablan, Paulie Dangerously, Paul Heyman, Jim Cornette, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Freddie Blassie, Lou Albano, Jimmy Hart. Those guys, because I'm not an athlete, but I was somebody who enjoyed making jokes, having fun, communicating with people, saying witty things, and talking was something that I enjoyed doing in life at the time. Before I found wrestling, I was very much into game shows. And originally, when I was 4 or 5 years old, before wrestling, I thought that I might be a game show host. So I always wanted to be on TV. But more so than any match, I mean, of course, in 1987, WrestleMania 3, when I saw Savage and Steamboat, of course, you would see great wrestling and great matches. But I loved the managers, los anunciadores. I loved Howard Finkel as a ring announcer. So it was those guys, your Roddy Pipers, your Jesse Venturas, your managers, your Howard Finkel ring announcing the match. And as far as favorite wrestlers, I loved Jake the Snake Roberts for his psicología, for his psychology. And I loved also the freak cartoon guys, because that's something you could only see on wrestling. So guys like Kamala, the Missing Link, George the Animal Steel, Los Bestias, those guys kind of, human cartoons helped get me into wrestling.
I think that they'll need like only a small translation, because thank you for doing it with us at the same time. Este caballero Joel Gertner, las personas que le llamaban la atención eran los manejadores, los que hablaban bonito, los que hablaban difícil, como Paulie Dangerously o Paul Heyman, Classy Freddie Blassie, o en muchos de los casos Bobby the Brain Heenan, que el tipo era brillante. También en cuanto a lucha libre, pues le llamó la atención, claro, WrestleMania 3, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat con Macho Man Randy Savage. Sí, la lucha, pero pues perfecto, le llamaba la atención los anunciadores como Howard Finkel, de igual manera, le encantaba la psicología de Jay the Snake Roberts, y entonces los anunciadores, los manejadores, fue como una mezcla de todo un poco para llegar a ser lo que es hoy día. And that's actually my second question for you. I mean, you were part of the original version of ECW, and that's why many of us remember your work for being one of the voices we remember, along either with Joey Styles or in the ring or with the Dudleys. It's like you did so many things for the company, But my question for you is, how did you got to the ECW? You were active before that. Then who granted you, your first opportunity with ECW?
Yeah, I ran into Paul Heyman while I was meeting different ECW wrestlers. I had been working independently for about 4 years, from the age of 16 to the age of 20. And I went to Philadelphia and I met some of the ECW wrestlers, and I wanted to be part of the scene there. And I saw Paul Heyman, and we were actually in the lobby level of a hotel that had a bar that the wrestlers drank at, and the wrestlers stayed at the hotel as well. And Paul had just called for the elevator, and he was about to go up in the elevator, and I stopped him. And ever knowing what an elevator pitch was in business, I gave him essentially an elevator pitch. I gave him my best pitch in about 60 seconds or less. And I said, Paul, you guys are going to be in Middletown, New York. I know that your ring announcers and timekeepers are from the Philadelphia area. I go to school nearby. And I told him about a mutual friend that we had and that I had admired his work. And I said, if it's not taking anything away from anybody else, and if it would help, I would greatly love the opportunity to try out and show you what I can do as a ring announcer in Middletown that day. And he just kind of looked at me and he said, "You want it?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You got it. Be there by 5."
Oh, wow.
And be there by 5 turned into 5 great years. And the ring announcing gig, before it became me as a manager or me as a color commentator and co-host, it became a foreign language ring announcer gig. And it allowed me to work with the luchadors who came in from Mexico, as well as Damian 666, who came in from Japan. And it allowed me to do a few months of Spanish language lucha libre style ring announcing, which was some of the best fun, and of course at that time some of the highest profile work that I had done in my career.
And I translate that briefly to Spanish. Incredible
Sure.
Story. Paul Heyman, obviamente estaba con sus muchachos en un hotel como parte de un show de DCW. Entonces Joel Gertner, pues, sabe que están allí, ellos siempre estaban en el área de la barra. Y antes de que él supiera lo que era un elevator pitch o esta propuesta en un elevador, él hizo un elevator pitch, mostrarle a Paul Heyman lo mejor que tenía en 60 segundos o menos, en lo que el elevador subía hasta su destino. Y logra convencerlo. De esta manera Paul Heyman le dice, ok, tú quieres el trabajo de anunciador, tú tienes el trabajo de anunciador. Llega ahí a las 5 de la tarde. ¿Por qué motivo? Porque todos sus anunciadores eran de Filadelfia. Él estaba en el área de Nueva York. Entonces le ofrece su trabajo, Heyman lo compra, y esos 5, llega a las 5 de la tarde, esos 60 segundos se convirtieron en 5 años de trabajo con ECW en diferentes roles como color commentator, como anunciador, como manejador, entre muchísimas otras cosas que pudo hacer en su carrera. You, as the part of the many roles you had during the ECW era, you were color commentator with Joey Styles, but you were color commentator because of a particular reason in the storyline, and it was because Taz and among many other guys thought that Joey Styles was too biased on the way he was commentating, so they brought in this heel manager and this heel commentator that everyone hated at that point, including myself. It's like, Jesus freaking Christ, why does this guy do not shut the hell up? You were always praising the heels, and it pissed everyone off, but you did an amazing work. How was your experience, working as a color commentator with Joey Styles among the other people that you had the opportunity to work with in ECW?
It was great. Working with Joey was great. What a consummate professional, and a guy that can announce an entire show all by himself, doing the play-by-play, the color, and the analysis. You watch TV now, at minimum, there's a 3-man booth. Yes. Sometimes you'll see a 4-man booth. And Joey was doing live pay-per-views by himself. So it was amazing to work with him. We made a great pairing because he was so straight-laced and kind of all business and professional, and the order amongst the disorder. And here was I trying to cause as much chaos as possible. Just a blast. And I got to work with Ravishing Rick Rude through working at the studio and being a commentator type, and we got to go back and forth kind of as equals, which was another thing I think that helped propel my career and helped elevate my my character.
I'm going to translate that briefly to Spanish. En aquel momento dado, este caballero llega a la escena de comentarios porque gente como Taz y los rudos, los luchadores rudos en aquel momento dado, decían que Joey Styles estaba demasiado parcializado. Ingresan este caballero que dice, ok, Joey Styles es excelente, podía anunciar una cartelera solo haciendo color commentating, narrando el suceso cada paso, cosas que para ahora necesitas 3 anunciadores o hasta 4 muchas veces, pues Joey Styles lo hacía solo, y llega Joel Gertner a jamaquear un poco el avispero y a causar caos allí. Entonces Joey llevando la narración, llevando las cosas, y Joel Gertner simplemente era como que vamos a tirarle sal, vamos a ponerle salsa a los tacos, como decimos acá en Latinoamérica, y ponerle ese fuego a la narración. Entonces tenía a Joey y a Joel haciendo una tremenda combinación. Among the many things you mentioned you did, you were a manager on ECW. You worked closely with WWE Hall of Famers like the Dudley Boys, for example. How was, or which was, you know, the most entertaining or difficult part of being a manager? Because back then in the 90s, it is not as it is in the 2020s. For example, back then, if a person was following you in order, you know, to hit you, it was going to be real. Now you have security and all this stuff, but back then anyone could jump the fence, and even though you had security, people could reach you at any moment. I mean, you were one of the most hated persons on that arena. So, you know, how was your experience, the best part or the most difficult part of being a manager?
We had great security, like you mentioned, and the Dudleys themselves are kind of in-house security because Bubba can take care of himself, as can Devon, and God bless his soul, Big Dick Dudley, when he was around, he was legitimately a one-man security force, and would not be afraid to defend the family. So it was a blast, being able to get as much heat as possible, create as many problems and trouble. I think in the past, I think Hugo Savinovich and I, we are in agreement that I am a very, very effective, I believe the term is buscapleitas.
Buscapleitos.
Yeah. And I was able to do that with the most freedom that anybody could ever have, because I had the Dudley Boys in the ring with me. We had Atlas security, and we had at least 30 extreme superstars in the back who, if need be, I think even if they needed to break character, gosh, we had one guy, I think, try to come into the ring one time at the very end of a show, and he was made to find out that that wasn't the greatest idea in the world.
I'm going to translate that briefly to Spanish. En aquel momento dado, este era el caballero, uno de los más odiados, o como hubiese dicho con Hugo Sabinovich, un buscapleito. Era el hombre que se encargaba de generar ese hit y ese odio al público. Y lo interesante de esto es que él dice que tenían excelente seguridad en ECW, pero si lo hubiesen necesitado, Bubba Ray, Devon y pues Big Dick Dudley, quien ya falleció, ya de por sí ellos no iban a dudar en meter mano por su familia. Pero en aquel momento dado sí hubo alguien que pues brincó o intentó brincar la verja al final de uno de los shows de ECW, y la realidad es que no le fue bien. Gertner describe obviamente eso como una experiencia excelente en su vida y algo por lo que está sumamente agradecido. As mentioned, well, I had the opportunity to speak with different original ECW guys like, I don't know, C.W. Anderson, Rob Van Dam, Tommy Dreamer, among many others that describe the backstage ambience on ECW. And to them, it was there was like no this ego problem, or you couldn't see anything of that, even though you had like huge superstars at the same time over there. How can you describe, you know, the backstage ambience between co-workers on ECW, and especially how did they manage to not have ego problems in such a big and incredible roster?
It was interesting. It was a very interesting dynamic. For many of us, it was the pinnacle of our career at that time. for many of us, we hadn't been yet to a WWF or a WCW, or so it was our big break, so to speak. So we were family. There were no problems. Most egos weren't out of control, and morale was great. What I found interesting was you would hear occasionally from a top superstar who had years and years in the business and who had been to WWF or WCW, maybe they'd been both places, and they were stopping by and visiting through ECW and having a run with us. And they would mention, they would, it was their testimony that they had never seen a locker room that was so well governed, in the sense that it was like family. There was nothing out of control. There were no egos that were running wild. There were no power plays. There was no sour morale, and that everybody was happy to be there and happy to be there with each other.
I'm going to translate that briefly to Spanish. En aquel momento, al igual que nos han comentado Tommy Dreamer, Rob Van Dam, C.W. Anderson, Joel Gertner nos describe ese ambiente backstage entre compañeros de trabajo en ECW como lo que era una gran familia, en donde tú no veías esta amargura, tú no veías estos problemas de ego, tú no veías estas peleas o estos pleitos, sino que todo el mundo estaba dispuesto a colaborar entre ellos, y testimonio de otras personas que ya habían estado en camerinos de WWF o ECW mencionan que en aquel momento dado nunca habían visto un camerino que hubiese estado tan bien gobernado como lo estaba el de ECW, por el hecho de que todo se llevaba de la manera correcta, nunca veías un problema, y era bien difícil en aquella época, específicamente teniendo tanto talento a más en su roster, pero lo lograron, lo hicieron, y obviamente la experiencia backstage fue increíble. You were with ECW for 5 years. Your work over there was incredible. Were you ever approached by either WWF or WCW during those years?
I was. I think I reached out to them, but I think after hearing there was interest, as the weeks are going by, even if something major is happening in your career and in your life as it relates to wrestling, you don't have the perspective that you have in the future looking back. So, sometimes if I knew some of these moments would be happening, I might remember them better or remember the order or the details. But when it's just happening to you in the here and now, it's hard to document. Sometimes I wish I kept, a journal, something like that. But from what I remember, at a time prior to ECW on TNN, so at a time prior to mid 99, at a time that was maybe more like 98 or earlier 99, I had heard that there might be interest. And I don't remember who called who. I may have made the call. And I wound up on the phone with Terry Taylor, who at the time was an agent for the WWF. And he mentioned to me that he had an idea to put me with Public Enemy, who had been through ECW and had been, enemies of the Dudley Boys for a little bit. And they wanted me, I think, to do what I had been doing with the Dudley Boys, but instead do it there with Public Enemy. And money was talked about. And the money at the time was significantly better than what I was making in 98 before my contract with ECW. But it was kind of not, it was a little bit better, but in the range of what I wound up making on my contract when I signed. Looking back, it's hard to, people ask if I regret not taking what might have been that offer. In 99, when the Dudleys left, they pulled me aside and told me they were going. And that was around the time that I was going to become co-host and commentator on TNN and sign a contract with ECW. And again, it's hard to know whether they were advising me to hold off on doing that, whether they wanted me as part of the act, because it's hard to remember the details of the conversation and where exactly they were going. So there may have been a couple of different opportunities. Definitely one that I heard with my own ears from Terry Taylor with Public Enemy, there could maybe have been an opportunity to go with the Dudleys if the WWF and the Dudleys and everybody was on board there. Who knows? But I wound up staying with ECW, and I've never regretted a thing in wrestling. My philosophy is you only regret the things that you don't do, because you would never know how those could turn out. You never really regret the things that you do.
So I'm going to translate that to Spanish. Le preguntamos si en aquel momento dado hubo interés de WWE o en aquel momento dado WWF o WCW. Menciona que no se acuerda cómo específicamente pasó. No recuerda el orden si él fue que se comunicó con ellos o ellos se comunicaron con él. Pero en algún momento dado, antes de mediados del 99, o sea, puede ser principios del 99 o finales ya del 98, pues ya él estaba hablando con Terry Taylor. En aquel momento dado era agente de WWF. Y sí, surgió una oportunidad de ir a WWF como manejador de Public Enemy en aquel momento dado. Lo querían llevar para ese rol en específico. La cantidad de dinero era significativamente mejor que lo que era con lo que estaba cobrando en aquel momento dado, pero bastante similar al contrato nuevo que él iba a firmar con ECW ya pues a mediados del 99. Entonces, los Dudleys también le sacaban al lado a una oportunidad. Le dicen, mira, pues nosotros nos vamos a ir. Y pues pudo haber tal vez surgido más adelante una oportunidad de igual manera con los Dudleys, pero Joel Gertner se mantuvo constantemente fiel a ECW, se firmó y se quedó con la empresa como conocemos con el resto de la historia. I also want to say something else in Spanish. Joel Gertner tiene 2 programas disponibles. Ahora mismo está 69-Minute Eargasm disponible en iTunes, en Stitcher y en diferentes plataformas de audio. Lo pueden escuchar de igual manera, como digo, iTunes o Stitcher. 69-Minute Eargasm también pueden buscarlos en Twitter, están disponibles allí. De igual manera tienes That Was Extreme, un programa That Was Extreme junto con Blue Meanie y Josh Chernoff. Blue Meanie y Josh Chernoff, That Was Extreme, lo tienen de igual manera disponible en todas las plataformas de audio, pues como iTunes, como Apple Podcasts, etcétera, etcétera. Y de igual manera...
Not to cut you off, the best way to find That Was Extreme is on adfreeshows.com. Awesome. And it's a Patreon thing, but it's a free show right now. Ad-free shows via their Patreon.
Perfect, adsfreeshow.com, lo pueden buscar ahí y pues tiene la alternativa gratuita, pero tiene la suscripción. La suscripción le incluye no solamente The Was Extreme, le incluye también What Happened When, les incluye el programa de Eric Bischoff, les incluye el de Kurt Angle, les incluye muchos otros, incluyendo el de Joel Gertner con Blue Meanie y Josh Chernoff, que es The Was Extreme, pues es adfreeshows.com, como les mencionamos. De igual manera pueden verificarlo y seguirlo en su cuenta de Twitter oficial como Studmuffin Says. De igual manera en Instagram como Quintessential Studmuffin, ahí lo pueden buscar en Instagram de esa manera, y en YouTube lo pueden buscar como Joel Gertner, que eventualmente vamos a estar viendo mucho más contenido en su canal de YouTube. First of all, sir, it's been more than an honor to have you here as our guest. There are a lot of topics we can be speaking with, but last question but not least, how do you felt going to that initial version of WWE's ECW, and I'm talking about the ECW One Night Stand event? You were part of it, the first one, I believe, in 2005. The ambience over there in Philadelphia was, I remember seeing the pay-per-view back home, and you could see everyone so hyped, so into it. For you, being one of the ECW originals, how do you felt seeing the concept revived just for one day?
I was glad. It helped give us a little bit of closure. It was kind of like a high school reunion. And that one was at the Hammerstein Ballroom or the Manhattan Center. Which no worries. But for me, because I'm from here, from Brooklyn, and grew up, a lot of the live wrestling that I saw when I was young was right here at Madison Square Garden or wherever here in New York City, as well as at the Hammerstein Ballroom watching Monday Night Raw. So what it allowed me was the opportunity to work with WWE at a venue where, when I was a teenager, I used to go to that venue to see WWE. And that for me was a very kind of full circle moment, professionally and in my life. So it was a great time. Got to see all the ECW guys again, got to meet a bunch of WWE superstars that were on the show. got to meet Vince McMahon and work with him, and took direction from him as we were going over things before the show. Got to work the WWE style, where they give you a script, and then a couple hours later they give you an updated script, which is different from anything that we had. We didn't have the bells and whistles in ECW, and it was kind of toned down for WWE a bit. I don't know that they had makeup for that particular show as they usually might, or hair or anything like that, but they did have props. They did have what they call magic. It was a little bit stepped up for sure from an ECW production, but for me it was just an amazing night, and it was from 12 noon until 12 midnight. By 12:15 I was home. It was that close to home that about 15 or 20 minutes after I left the building, I was already at home, and just trying to decompress and be able to get to sleep after having again, what was probably the pinnacle of my career up to that point.
And it sounds like that moment to Spanish, en aquel momento dado, tienen ese closure, ese cierre en sus carreras que pues merecían tener, la ECW con ECW One Night Stand en el 2005 en Manhattan. Y en aquel momento dado, él menciona que fue como una reunión de high school, de escuela secundaria. Todo el mundo se vio, todo el mundo obviamente juntos nuevamente. Quedaba cerca de su casa, como 15, 20 minutos de su casa, o sea que estaba mucho más que cómodo. Y lo interesante de esto es que él menciona que en aquel momento dado, pues tuvo la oportunidad de trabajar directamente con Vince mano a mano, pues como que toda esa experiencia de WWF que tal vez no tuvo allá en ECW, pues, que te den un libreto, como él dice, empezar a memorizártelo y que a los varios minutos te den otro libreto actualizado y ese ya no es. Todas esas experiencias pues bonitas las tuvo, y en aquel momento dado él puede describirlo como esa cima de su carrera. Antes de irnos nuevamente, 69 Minute Eargasm lo pueden buscar en iTunes y en Stitcher. Lo pueden buscar también a Joel Gertner en YouTube. Lo pueden buscar en Twitter como Stott Muffin Says, y igual que en Instagram como Quintessential Stott Muffin Says. No, discúlpame, Quintessential Stott Muffin. I think that's the correct one. Y de igual manera, en That Was Extreme con Blue Meanie y Josh Chernoff, lo pueden conseguir en @freeshows.com, @freeshows.com. Mr. Gertner, more than honored to have you here today as our guest. Always wishing you the best of lucks in all your projects, and let's hope to see you at least one more time. I don't know, inside a ring as an announcer for a big company, or outside the ring managing someone. I think that'll be really special for many of us. So let's hope to see more of Joel Gertner coming soon, especially on your program 69 Minute Eargasm and That Was Extreme as well. Thank you for your time, sir.
Michael, thank you. I appreciate the love and support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.